Thank you for the invitation to speak today at this interesting conference. So we've heard a lot about concepts already, and I have to say that there are several concepts in my short paper. We've heard about the Second World War, the importance of that. We've heard about politics. We've heard a bit about historiography, which I think is something that's extremely important for humanities as well. And I think what I'm going to outline the next 15 minutes is more about the importance of the historiographical perspective on humanities from an archaeological point of view, because I am a classical archaeologist. So, new nationalism was a term that was coined by Theodore Roosevelt, an American president, who gave a groundbreaking speech with the title, with the exact same title, in Osawatomie, Kansas, in August 1910. In the context of this speech that was given in the wake of the American Civil War and addressed to a society also which was struggling to find common ground, it was meant as a positive term, a term that lent hope for the future and a truly democratic society, as Roosevelt phrased it. Today, the heading New Nationalisms include an array of right-wing political movements across the globe, not only restricted to Europe and America, which in particular in the 21st century have developed speedily, and the term has taken upon itself a quite different notion. Already in 1906, Theodore Roosevelt, following his conservationist beliefs and spurred on by scholarly and also a public outcry at the destruction of archaeological sites in the Southwest, signed into law an act for the preservation of American antiquities. He was the first US president to put emphasis on American archaeological cultural heritage, voicing the embedded importance of such heritage to the wider understanding of American society after the Civil Wars. And in this formative period of American history, archaeology merged with a sense of the nation being born and also renewed, and archaeology took a center stand in defining the emerging nation after the devastating Civil War. Ancient cultures became a gathering point for the people. Interestingly, the later President Franklin Roosevelt, in the so-called New Deal period, created the New Deal's job program to put people to work and rescue Americans from economic misery and the depth of despair during the Great Depression. Men and women were put to labor in a variety of jobs, from building roads to improving zoos. Ordinary citizens with actually no prior experience were called on to act as archaeologists. So they excavated sites across the nation, ranging in size from small camps to massive mound complexes and dating from thousands of years ago to the early colonial period. Basically, archaeological work became a means of digging American society out of the Great Depression during the Second World War. Meanwhile, Adolf Hitler and his regime created the Ahnenerbe organization, formerly the Deutsches Ahnenerbe Studiengesellschaft für Geistesurgeschichte. This was an organization started as the Research Institute for the Prehistory of Mind. And in 1936, it was attached to Hitler's Reichsführer, SS, and also led by Heinrich Himmler. By 1937, it was the primary instrument of Nazi archaeology and archaeological propaganda, subsuming smaller organizations such as Reinhardt's Archaeology Group, and also filling the ranks with investigators. And these people included people such as Hermann Wirth, who was the co-founder of the Ahnenerbe also, and who attempted also to prove that Northern Europe was the cradle of all Western civilization. The main goals of this organization were to study the territory, ideas, and achievements of the Indo-Germanic people, to bring the research findings to life and present them to the German people, and to encourage every German to get involved in the organization. So archaeology was put to work in order to create a suitable prehistory for the supposed Ur-German people. Archaeology is basically defined as the scientific study of material cultures, past human life and cultures, and in Greek, where the term originates from, it literally means the study of ancient things. The study of ancient things and the history of collection, have always been closely linked as well. And our venue today is really a living proof of this, because as well as being the home of J.C. Jacobsen and his family, the house also became a gathering place for many artists and also scientists with whom the brewer surrounded himself. In 1876 to 78, the main building of the house was supplemented with the hall that we are in today, which is the Pompeii Hall, a conservatory with a peristyle designed by Bönnecke. Pompeii was really one of the most magnificently privately owned conservatories of the time, both in terms of size and decoration. It's adorned with Doric columns that you see of limestone from the Faxe quarries, so Danish limestone in a Doric style. And it's also decorated with artworks by, among other, Bertel Thorvaldsen, one of our big Danish artists. The north and south walls and the apse inside the colonnade here are dominated by reliefs by Theodor Stein. And these also include scenes from Homer's Iliad, with a number of Greek gods appearing in their account of Achilles' rage at King Agamemnon during the war between Greece and Troy. And even one of the reliefs also, there is a portrait of J.C. Jacobsen, who is here united or identified through the swineherd Eumeus, and we can have a look at it here on the wall later today. So he's produced with the face of Jacobsen. On the east wall and the apse inside the room, there are a number of copies of antique busts side by side, with busts with icons, with the poet Homer, the statesman Pericles, the general Scipio, alongside Bertel Thorvaldsen, the scientist Ørsted, and the politician L.N. Witt, illustrating really the brewer's very diverse interests. There's also a bust, of course, of Jacobsen himself, as he looked not as a swineherd, but as a brewer. Jacobsen, so to say, really situated himself very firmly and also visually within the scientific and artistic framework of his time, just like the ancient Greeks and Romans also had done before him, and he showed off his knowledge and opinion of the past, picked and shaped it to fit his vision of the world. So collecting is a way of studying the world and also telling a very particular story about the world, and perhaps more importantly, how one also situates oneself in the world. Therefore, ancient objects have always been closely connected to political situations and ways of seeing the world. The earliest object that we know was collected during the New Kingdom period in Egypt in the 16th century BCE, and it was a sea urchin. I couldn't find an illustration of it, but it was inscribed with hieroglyphs around it, telling us that a scribe priest found it in a stone quarry in the Sinai area, and it was put into a structure that was sort of a museum library. Think about that in the New Kingdom period. One of the first objects that we know truly had a collection history. The founder of scientific and systematic archaeology was the German scholar Joachim Winckelmann, and he published his first work, very influential work, in 50 copies, and it was called Gedanken über die Nachahmung der griechischen Werke in der Malerei und Bildhauerkunst. It became a huge success and had to be printed in another 50 copies very soon after its appearance. And apart from being the first to develop a systematic method to study originals of Greek sculpture and their later Roman copies, so the so-called Kopienkritik, Winckelmann, as a Geisteswissenschaftler of his time, dared to think big thoughts and put them in writing in well-phrased German. So one of his quotes reads, "Der einzige Weg für uns groß, ja wenn es möglich ist, unnachahmlich zu werden, ist die Nachahmung der Alten. We can only become original by copying the ancients." Classical archaeology just turned 300 years. It was the anniversary of Winckelmann's birth in December, and it embraces the study of the ancient world, the Greek and the Roman world, and the cultural sphere around them. And in the wake of that, also the rediscovery of the Orient, of the East, took place, among other things, with Carsten Niebuhr, who set out from Copenhagen in 1761. Classical archaeology has developed since Winkelmann, but it's still influenced heavily by classicistic ideals and ideas. So white marble sculpture, which was almost never white in antiquity, but rather stark and to our modern eyes painstakingly colorful, still dominates museum collections today. And even here at our conference venue, we also see examples of that. In the 1980s, the Louvre in Paris sandblasted their marble sculpture and limestone sculpture in order to obtain truly white sculptures, thereby erasing all traces of the polychromy left from ancient times. And to us, therefore, the past remains marble white and pristine, erasing history and knowledge. Archaeology is truly destructive and a dangerous discipline, and many archaeologists have even died on their digs. And I'll speed up so I can finish. The First World War really brought a crisis with it within the humanities and a crisis of humanities. This could be felt within disciplines which prior had been extremely internationalized, such as archaeology. After the First World War, archaeology took a turn and emphasis was laid on structuralism. For example, the systematic way of investigating urbanism was developed, and this took place in particular in the Levant, where urbanism goes back to 4,000 millennia BCE. That was a very brief honeymoon time of archaeology, which among other people also involved the great Danes like Johannes Elid Østrup and also Harald Ingholt, who were partly founded by the Carlsberg Foundation as well. And in her memoirs, Come Tell Me How You Live, Agatha Christie lively describes this period in the Near East because she was married to the famous archaeologist Max Mallowan, and she describes how he digs himself through 4,000 years of cultural layers without documenting a single one before he got to his beloved Bronze Age. We don't do that anymore. But it was also a period where the nation, or where archaeology really became connected to the nation state again, and still remains it. While Jerusalem has once again become the center of attention, most recently due to the transfer of status as the capital of Israel by the United States, is also one of the cities in archaeology and history which has been contested for millennia. So the Romans under Vespasian and Titus, and you see the Titus Arch in Rome, captured Jerusalem and spoiled the Jewish temple. This started the conflicts of cultures and religion, which partly is going on still today in the region. So the complete absence of the Jewish temple on the Temple Mount, which was devastated by the Romans, is what gives life to conflict today. And here archaeology also gives a very interesting small and new insight, because it's long been thought that Judea was simply captured by the Romans and labels as the Romans would do it as Judea capta. However, a quite recent find, you see it here, a gold coin, a so-called aureus, has shown that for a brief moment in time, Judea was recepta, it was received by the Roman Empire, and it was a title that was much less shameful than being captured or capta. So what exactly led to this change in title and the retraction of these recepta coins still remain elusive to us, but shows that history can be changed with small finds still today. And one very last example before we end is about the visionarity of our Danish collectors also. In the late 19th century, Carl Jacobsen collected what is today now the largest collection of Palmyrene funerary portraits, today housed at Ny Carlsberg Glyptotek. And when he did that, he of course didn't know that this collection would be the most important today. And I have been studying that together with a research group funded by the Carlsberg Foundation for the last couple of years. And we now have a very large corpus, and it's a very basic research project, which now also, of course, has gained a completely different importance within humanities, because we've had to take stand on ethical or unethical ways of collecting. I recently received death threats from a British collector who had asked me to verify some of the pieces. I told him they came directly off the wall of the museum in Palmyra, and he said I could count on being shot next time I left my apartment, and so on and so forth. So there are new challenges for humanities researchers also to sort of work with the FBI, the Interpol, and the UNESCO and know what to say, not to say in certain situations. So basic research, really basic research, describing sculptures, understanding them, doing nerdy stuff, has resulted in innovative thinking and groundbreaking information. And this is my understanding of what humanities must do and also must contribute with to the world. The humanities are not free-floating whims of time, but rather a string of well-founded disciplines which enjoy development potential, with new knowledge being created every hour of every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rubina.